because you do have to have a level of vulnerability, but you also have to realize that like other people on your team, the people who report to you are vulnerable as well. And if you do want to have a relationship where there is trust, where they know that you have their best interest at heart, you have to be a whole human person and you have to put yourself out there. And a lot of people leading is leading by example. And so if I expect you to be open to my feedback once a quarter or once a year, what makes me above that? Like, really, what makes me above that? And when I think about effective leadership, we get very loose with what is good when we talk about people
Mhm.
leaders. But I think it's the extent to which you are leading people in a way that you are getting to favorable outcomes for them and for the organization. So again, if I
Mhm.
am leading and I think I'm doing a good job, but I'm not leading you in the right way for you, then I can't call myself a good leader.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Manager to Manager. This episode is a bit different. Normally, you hear me as the host, and I am interviewing other people leaders so that they can share their experiences with you and we can learn together. Today's episode is different because today the guest is me. I really wanted to be able to, one, let you all get to know me a little bit better, to share with you why manager to manager supporting people leaders is so important to me, and share a couple of lessons I've learned along the way as a people leader. I thought it would be weird to just sit here and interview myself, so I reached out to one of my good friends, Dr. Emme Devonish, and she is going to play host today and will help us get through this episode. Em, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be sitting in your seat and getting a chance to have your listeners and your viewers learn more about manager to manager and everything that you do, which is so great for people leaders.
Oh, I'm excited. So before we get started, obviously, normally I would start off by having people learn more about our guest, but in this instance, I would love them to learn more about our host. So can you share with the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that invitation. I am principal, executive coach, and consultant at Creative Compliance Communication Services, LLC. So it is an executive coaching and consulting firm that specializes in ethics, culture, leadership, and compliance. So originally, I started my career as an SEC attorney and then moved forward after that to work in big law firm doing securities transactions, and then internally moving up to become a vice president and chief compliance officer of an investment management firm. So that's where I really enjoyed working in legal compliance and ethics. And later on, when I started working as a consultant, I realized that compliance is really necessary, but having a good compliance structure with the right people in the right seats is what makes teams and companies succeed. So that's what got me into coaching. So several years ago, I became a SHRM CP and I started doing more HR work and doing more consulting, but still maintaining my presence in corporate compliance consulting. So I'm so excited to talk to you because I love talking about the world of human relationships and leaders and management and what we can do to improve organizations and the culture within the workforce. So I'm just so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get started.
All right. So it's only fair. I know that your listeners know a lot about you because they have a great following on many different outlets. Just as I shared a little bit about myself, it would also be great in this context to just talk a little bit about what led you to this point.
Yeah. So, my goodness. So, what people may not really know about me is that first and foremost, I'm actually an IO psychologist. So, I started really being infatuated with the world of work very early. I was 18 years old. I was working at AOL my freshman year of college. So I am obviously dating myself. And I worked there during that summer where we went from the unlimited plan to the hourly plan to the unlimited plan. And I always tell people like, it was the best
Mhm.
of times, it was the worst of times because we're growing so fast. It was insane. But what really stood out to me was during that period of growth, we had amazing people leaders who would walk up and down the halls with these comfort cards. Do you want a koozie? Do you want a blanket? How can I help you? And what I really loved about that time was that at AOL, during that period of growth, there was really this sense of we, where even though we were going through what felt like an uncomfortable growth spurt, the managers, the employees, the senior leaders were all in it together. And I didn't have the words or language to really understand it then. But for me, that registered as employee engagement. And just so happened that I was in college. I was failing principles of macroeconomics. I'm not a math girly. And one of my professors gave me this VHS tape and was like, here, watch this. And it was really about IO psychology. And it was the study of people at work. And so it all started coming together for me, just really understanding that I loved people, I loved work, and I loved the experience that people have at work. And I was fascinated by it. So I went on to go through several organizations literally after leaving college. And I had the most amazing opportunities to lead teams, to be in HR, to also support operations. And so I always sat in the middle of those three things. And that formed my perspective of, my gosh, this role is so important. But I'll tell you, when I started also leading teams and I became a manager, I also was like, my goodness, this role is killing me softly because it's a lot of work and it is a full contact sport and you put so much into it that I was like,
Mhm.
I want to help other people who are doing this type of work, people who really are taking on the onus of care for their teams. That's who I want to support and serve because it's a very difficult job. And that's how I got here today.
That's fantastic. There's a lot of experience in what you just said. And one of my elder aunts, who's 83 years old, said to me the last time that I saw her, age is wisdom. So when you explain something and you say that you're dating yourself, I'm thinking to myself, here's somebody who has some knowledge, who's lived experiences, and can really leverage that and apply that somewhere else or in different situations in a very responsible way. So I think that's very valid. I'd like to ask you about something really specific that could help our listeners right now, considering your experience at AOL and walking down the hallways and talking to people and what you learned then and what you know now, pre-COVID, during COVID, and
Yeah.
post-COVID, that we're now in the scenario of some people still work remotely, some people have been called back to the office, and some people are in hybrid situations.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for managers who have to manage a team of a combination of those, where you have someone who has, I saw this recently on LinkedIn, that some people are allowed to still work at home while others have to come into the office and others are hybrid. So, in a situation like that, what's your best advice for helping a team pull together in that situation and get on board with getting the work done and doing what the company wants?
Yeah. So I actually have been really fortunate in that I have led teams that are all in one place, but a lot of my people leadership has been with people who are not in the same place. So even in my earlier organizations, my team was distributed. And in my later organizations, my team was distributed. Some of them worked at home, some of them were in the office. And the thing that I find very interesting is that we think that it's a different kind of leadership, and it's really
Mhm.
not. The key is to be intentional. So when I think about the things that, we do when we're all in the same place, and we always want to replace the water cooler experience, that's like a happenstance. And we would have proximity helping us lead better, just almost without us doing anything. But intentionality is really the important part. So when my teams were in the same place, I still did the same things. I made sure we had important conversations on a regular basis. I created opportunities for them to connect and do fun things. I made sure that everybody had growth opportunities. And even with them being distributed and hybrid and remote, I did the same things. Our team meetings were called casual coffee and cameras, and we would literally just hop on wearing whatever, and we would have those meetings and we would talk and we would laugh And we would just build that team culture. And so I think what I would say is that it takes deliberate effort to make sure that you are helping your team, no matter where they are, to be able to make sure they are seen, heard, and valued and can participate. And even though we are going through this interesting time where the word equity has gotten this bad rap, there is something about the equity of experience that you have to focus on. And what that means is, am I creating space for somebody, no matter where they are, to have a voice, to have time with me, to achieve their personal aspirations? Am I making a way for them no matter where they are, no matter where they're sitting? And so what I would say is that think about what creates culture, those elements. Be deliberate about how those things show up, no matter where your team is located. And be deliberate about making sure that no matter where anyone is sitting, they have the same opportunities for growth, performance, and recognition as anybody else.
One of the things that you mentioned is not just the intentionality and making sure that there's room for people to connect and to grow, but also that you do the same things. And that really resonates with me because one thing that I tell my corporate coaching clients when they come to me is you've been hired to do this job. You have all the technical skills, the knowledge, and the experience to execute that. But while you're executing, there is always room to grow, to learn, to connect more with others. And when you develop those skills, especially through your emotional intelligence, that helps you become a better leader. And that requires, as you said, intentionality. So you have to be really deliberate about that. So I completely agree with that statement. The other thing that came out of how well you've managed to work with these distributed teams is the word space, because people are working in different spaces and you've articulated how you navigate these different spaces as a people leader. And in that same vein, one of the other topics that often comes up when I have conversations with corporate clients is how to manage multi-generational teams, because we have people in the workforce who are Gen Z, Gen X, baby boomers, all mingling together in different spaces, different work styles, different habits, etc. And that equity of experience is important in understanding. So, what advice do you have for managers on how to effectively navigate those intergenerational spaces so that the communication flows well and the team works cohesively?
So you know what's interesting? I never focus on, this is going to sound so crazy. I never focus on large category differences. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is to know me and to know my philosophy on people leadership. The very core of what I believe is that you should know your team. And not only should you know your team, you should encourage them to know each other and to see each other as individuals and to see each other in ways that you understand what that person needs and you have the ability to flex. And so when I think about what we see in generational differences, it is so much like there you can see where a certain generation might have an attitude about something, and by attitude, like a perspective, right? So I think about baby boomers and their perspective on work and loyalty and how you come to the workplace. That is very different from millennials and Gen Zs and how they see the workplace. But when you're leading a team, I think those differences might just be a starting point that opens up your curiosity. And then your real job is to then think about what is important to the actual people on my team. So when I think about it, I'm always like, knowing your team means knowing their values, knowing what matters to them, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, and knowing that individually and helping people think about how do you flex. So on my teams, like whatever someone's name is, so like, you'd be like in the M of it all. And that basically means that I know this person enough so well that I'm going to know that if these files are unorganized, it's going to make her itch. If we give her something technical to do, she's not going to love it. But it also might mean if I need somebody who is going to help me make sense of these directives that have come down, she's my person. And so, to the extent
Mhm.
that you can really, I always say, speak the language of that individual person on your team and help your teams do it amongst themselves, you're creating the right flexible environment that helps you work through generational differences or any other large category differences you might have. But it is about that person and saying, this might give me a heuristic to understand her a little bit better, but I really need to dig into knowing who she is. And so I spend a lot of my time and a lot of work making sure that the team always has this sort of firm understanding of each other, their own preferences, work experiences, background, so that you can say in the Kamaria of it all, or in the whoever of it all, this is what they need. This is how they approach things. And here's how we might need to flex to make sure that we are all on the same page and working together really well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so important to keep that communication and understanding the different, not just the skills, but what makes that person motivated to come in and to do the work that they do. And from what you said, in my world of emotional intelligence and culture work, we talk about Maslow's hierarchies of needs at work. And so just as there's basic needs and then there are higher level needs and it goes up all the way, there's that same concept that applies at work. And you really clearly articulated that it's important to understand what your team members need, like what motivates them, not just doing the job, but what else about the work, about the company makes them want to come in and to be part of that team and to grow and to flourish. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I think is so key for everyone to really lean into is that agility and that adaptability quality that's great to find in leaders, and understanding the team and their needs and really working with them, that and having that curiosity about the person and not just seeing them as someone just to do the particular function.
Yeah,
That's empathy at play, and I think that's really important in a leader.
it is. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the role of a people leader is.
Mhm.
And I consider it to be someone who orchestrates win scenarios for the organization and for the people who work there. And so it's my job to know what are your aspirations. It's my job to know what does matter to you. It's my job to interpret what the organization has said globally and figure out what that means for my team. So if that means if I have the power as people leader to say, hey, listen, I know that your son is having a graduation or a whatever, take the day off. That's okay,
Mhm.
right? If that's within my power, and I don't know that every organization, there are many different types of teams who do many different types of work, but largely in the corporate spaces that I work in, I do have that sort of latitude to say, you know what, I know this is important to you. So do X, Y, and Z. And we're notorious on my team. I always tell people, I don't work on my birthday. I don't expect you to work on yours. Little things like that are important because everyone comes to work with their own dreams, hopes, and aspirations. And they're looking for, yes, to make money for the company, which is what we are here for, but they also have
Right.
their own things that they want to accomplish for themselves. And so I think as a people leader, we sit in the middle of that and we're able to navigate and figure out what is the sweet spot of helping both the organization and our teams be successful.
Yeah, so important. So when a new manager comes into a company and takes over a team, what are the top three things you think that manager needs to know or do to start off in the best light possible of stepping into that team and leading?
I think the first, which will for me always be the same thing, is taking that time to get to know who's on the team,
Mhm.
to listen to what they think is working and not working, to understand what they do. What I think what's really frustrating for teams is when they do have a new leader who wants to come and make sweeping changes and they don't really understand the why behind what's happening. So even just taking the time to make sure that you're listening and you're hearing people and you're giving them a voice to share what's working and what's not working. And I'll tell you, there's another great episode with Melissa Anderson where she talks about this and how you take over an established team. And she really articulated what I saw her do firsthand with my own team was how you just give people an opportunity to be a part of what the change is going to be. Because obviously, with different leadership, there's going to be a change there. And so you want to create this opportunity for them to co-create the future together and show that willingness to listen and take in different voices. So I think just taking over any sort of team is realizing that there are things that were in place before you got there. You need to honor that in a way, help them move forward if that's what you need to do. but show them that you are there to help make things better. That's not to say that what was happening before wasn't good, but to help make things better and maybe change course a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like you not only do you have a lot of experience as being a people leader yourself, but people may have even come to you, other people leaders, while you were one in an organization for advice. Was there a time where you didn't feel as confident as a manager? Did something happen to
Yes.
teach you how to be a manager? Like, how do you know this stuff?
You know what? That's a great question. How do you know? First of all, I love that. So how do I know this stuff? There's a couple of reasons that I know this stuff. And what's really funny, I am very adamant that every person who comes on the podcast is a people leader and not like a technical academic expert, because a lot of it you learn through time, through trial and error. I will say, as I mentioned before, I'm an psychologist. And so a large part of what I know is just really through academic study. You learn leadership philosophies, you learn motivational theories and all of those things. But it's not until you actually put those things into place do you really learn what works. And it's not until you've put your foot in your mouth a couple times or stepped in a pothole a couple times that you learn what doesn't work. And so I can say when I first became a manager, I had the benefit of having one direct report. So I got to start with one person and kind of stick my toe in the water and
Okay.
be like, okay, this doesn't work. That doesn't work. And I learned the rudimentary things that you have to do, the performance appraisals, the feedback, the recognition. I learned all of that because I had one person. It was easy. I had one person. And I then moved on to a larger team and realized that there were still a lot of things that I didn't know. And so one time I volunteered to do a 360 at work.
Okay.
And we were piloting a 360. And I, again, had just taken over a team. I had my own team, another team had gotten folded into my team. I volunteered to do this 360. And when I got the results back, I was a little shocked at my team's perception, and they did not think I was
Mhm.
doing a good job in some areas. And
Mhm.
it was a very eye-opening moment that helped me to realize that your perception of yourself and your team's perception of what you might be doing may not be in alignment. And that you also can be really good at some aspects of being a people leader and not good at other aspects of being a people leader. But I didn't really have a criteria for what is good. And so from that incident, from people giving me feedback, being like, no, Kamaria, this is not working for us. I then sat myself down and said, okay, we're going to try different things. We're going to experiment. We're going to tap into ourselves as a social scientist, and we're going to start figuring out what works. And so with my team, I would literally run experiments in my head about what works. And so if I think about communication, okay, I thought I was communicating. They were like, no, ma'am, you are not. And so I was like, how can I do it differently? How can I do it in a way that they understand what is happening? And that's when I learned to put in my own little feedback loops. Even with recognition, I was thinking I was doing a great job. They did not think I was doing a great job. And
Okay.
again, this word about the concept of equity, I had one-on-ones with my team, like you're supposed to do. But the reality is, some people really wanted their hour. Some people did not want an hour. And so on my
Mhm.
schedule, they could see that some people's one-on-ones were an hour and some people's were 30 minutes. And they were like, why is that? And to them, it felt like it was not an equitable experience. They didn't have equitable access to me. And through their feedback, I said, listen, I will schedule everybody for the same amount of time. And what you do with your time is up to you. So if you want to hop off early, you can. If you want to stay with me for an hour, you can. But it was through the constant communication with my team that I learned that I was not the great people leader that I thought I was, that there was areas for me to do better. And I would do something and then I would check, I would get feedback from them. I would do something else, I would get feedback from them, and that helped me. And the biggest takeaway that I would share with people is that every person is different, every team is different. What works for one team may not work with another team. And so that ability to flex and to ask the right questions and to listen and get feedback cues from your team is so important, because we are in this position, this where we have this kind of like positional power over the team. And so if you go backwards, it used to just be like, I'm the manager and however I do it, people should flex to me. But that's really not
Mhm.
the case. And so learning how to do it was really just trial and error, these many experiments, listening to my team, setting criteria and behavior expectations. So if I wanted to do X, I tried to do Y and I saw if that worked. So I think being the little scientist that I am helps me a lot to start to solidify what works. So yeah, trial and error all the time.
Yeah, and you display some of those competence that I work with all the time for developing leaders, right, in their emotional intelligence, because it's about behavior modification. And so being able to face a brutal 360, which is something that we've all of
Yes,
anyone who's been in a leadership capacity, if you haven't done a 360, please do one because you
yeah,
might really be surprised at the feedback. And it's just feedback and it's helpful. The
it is
feedback is helpful
helpful.
because you learn and you grow, right?
You do. And something else that I would do with my teams as well. So, like, we got in the habit of having these quarterly conversations as a part of our performance management cycle. And they're very one way, the way we design them in the organization. So, it's every quarter I get to tell you how well you're doing. I get to tell you what you're
Right.
doing better, all the things.
Right.
And thinking about feedback loops. And this is just, again, the opportunity for your team to tell you how you're doing. I started implementing my own feedback loops, meaning every quarter when I would tell them how well they did, or they look back, they look forward, what they should work on, I
Mm-hmm.
then also asked them to do the same for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it became a part of the rhythm and cycle of how we communicated. And then every quarter I would do as a team. So one-on-one, they could do that with me. If we're in their one-on-ones, I'm like, here's what you've done. They get to immediately tell me back, here's how you've done. But then every quarter I would also do like a team check-in where I would use a particular grid and I would say, okay, let's all the team, let's look back on what did you love? What questions do you have? What could have worked better? What suggestions do you have? And so every quarter as a team, we would also do a look back. And again, that included them telling me how well I had led in the last quarter or where things fell apart. And it just gives you information and insight that helps you continue to hone and grow as a people leader. And I think that's going back to why am I doing this? It's because developing as a people leader is a continuous process. A lot of times when we talk about leaders, we go, this person's good or this person's bad, as if it's this dichotomous thing
Mm-hmm.
that you are one or the other. But the reality is, we continue to learn and grow as people leaders. We continue to develop and get better. And so, the same way you develop toward expertise in any other job or role, people leading is the exact same. One of my good friends, Ben Eubanks, always says, we all suck in the beginning. So true. So true. And then you do have those experiences. You have those 360s where people are like, girl, that is terrible. And you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let me try something else. Or you had that conversation that didn't quite go the way you wanted it to. And so you're thinking, okay, how can I do it better next time? So opening yourself up to continuous feedback from your team helps you to continue to grow as a people leader.
Yeah, I think that's just really the heart of why do a 360 because it helps you, it helps your team, it helps the organization. But I do have to say that I find your feedback loop to be gutsy because it takes courage. But you know what? You have to be courageous to be a leader because that way you listen to the honest feedback. People are not going to lie to you and they'll trust you because, as you said earlier, they'll be seen, they'll be heard, they'll feel like they're understood, and you'll have those communication lines staying open, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important. And it also is great for your relationship skills and just building that sense of this person may be my supervisor, but this person sees me as a person. I trust them. If they ask me to do something, even if I don't necessarily know the why right now, but it's something that I need to get done, I'm going to do it. I know it's going to be explained later because sometimes you have
Yeah.
those situations where you don't have time to explain everything and you
You
just need to
don't.
get it done because you're the manager. You got 10 different things happening at the same time. And sometimes you just need people to just do the task and go run with it. And you want to be able for them to have that autonomy to do that and for you to know that they're doing what they
Yeah.
need to do.
Well, and I think part of that for me too is like, one, it is gutsy because you do have to have a level of vulnerability, but you also have to realize that like other people on your team, the people who report to you are vulnerable as well. And if you do want to have a relationship where there is trust, where they know that you have their best interest at heart, you have to be a whole human person and you have to put yourself out there. And a lot of people leading is leading by example. And so if I expect you to be open to my feedback once a quarter or once a year, what makes me above that? Like, really, what makes me above that? And when I think about the effective leadership, so we get very loose with what is good when we talk about people
Mhm.
leaders, but I think it's the extent to which you are leading people in a way that you are getting to favorable outcomes for them and for the organization. So again, if I
Mhm.
am leading and I think I'm doing a good job, but I'm not leading you in the right way for you, then I can't call myself a good leader. And
Mhm.
if I am asking things of you that I'm not displaying of myself, if I'm saying to you, we honor deadlines and I'm missing all kinds
Right.
of deadlines, or we honor our commitments and I'm canceling your one-on-ones, I am absolutely not showing you, but through my behaviors and getting you to trust that I am the person of my word that I need to be in order for you to trust me. So I think it's so important that we do lead by example and we show that we're human. Because the other thing that I think is really important and why this podcast, this movement, this thing that I'm doing is so important to me is because managers are people. We are human beings who are doing a job. And we have the same hopes, dreams, fears, and aspirations as employees. And people forget that we are also employees. We're not this
Mhm.
separate category of people. So, the same way that I am somebody's manager, I have a manager. The same way we talk about employee engagement, I need to be engaged as a manager. So, I'm a human person who is doing this. And I want other managers to help people see that they are human people who are doing this. Do we make all the right decisions? No. Are we infallible? No. But if you know me, if you talk to me, if I help you build a relationship, you also will start to understand why I make the decisions that I make. On my teams, everybody knows what Kamaria is going to say and why Kamaria is going to say it because I open up enough to let them get to know me and I explain my decisions. There are actually very few times when I will say, just do it, right? Because if we've been having conversations along the way and I'm explaining strategy and I'm explaining my rationale, that when I say, hey, can we do X, Y, and Z? Most people will understand and know what the goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, what my thought process is. And that goes back to the very beginning of know your team. Knowing people enough on your team to know how they rationalize information, what choices they might make, that's super important. And I want them to know it of me as much as I want them to know it of them. So when I'm saying do X, Y, and Z, please they know where we're going, why we're going there, and we can have a conversation if it doesn't feel right to them.
Yeah. And one of the subtle things that you said there that I want to make sure that everybody hears really clearly is you talked about canceling one-on-ones, not showing up on time. These little things fall into the wheelhouse of what I consider to be ethical practices. So one of the foundations of my business is ethics, right? And I teach leaders how to make ethical decisions and how to model ethical behavior. And so when you're just canceling constantly on your team and showing up late, then you're not integrity with yourself and you're not in integrity with your team. So then you're not projecting and showing them how to be that ethical leader that keeps your word and does these things and expects them to keep their word. So they keep their word with themselves, with you, with other team members, with internal and external stakeholders. So I'm glad that you spoke about that and we were managed to bring that into the conversation. But one of the things that strikes me is that you enjoy what you do so much and working with these teams and having this just wealth of knowledge in these companies. And I think after learning from your 360, developing yourself to become an awesome people leader, what motivated you really to just branch out on your own and become an entrepreneur and start the whole manager to manager
Yeah.
process program?
So it's interesting what you just said because I think for me, it is empathy.
Mhm.
So there's two things, right? One is I've spent my entire career supporting people leaders. In my first role, I worked at a hospital in a healthcare system, and I would help them to interpret their employee engagement survey results. And I would help them think about how that impacted our patient satisfaction. So, how your teams performing against what our businesses are.
Mm.
And then I went on to other organizations where my role was essentially the same. I would understand the connection between the team experience, employee engagement, and your customer experience. We call that the service profit chain. And I worked for a leader who really believed in that. And so he allowed me just a playground of things to be able to help our store directors be better. And I moved on to other organizations where I would see what we were doing around manager training, and I'd be like, that's not really what we should be doing. And so I'd have the opportunity to continue to develop them. And so a large part of my background has always been developing managers. But you also heard me say that I became a manager and I was like, this role is killing me softly. And to
Mhm.
me, that is empathy, right? I think a lot of people don't understand the role and they don't understand the pressures and they don't understand the organizational constraints that people leaders are under. And I found myself in a room as in an HR meeting, right? So I have my HR hat on and we're talking about managers. And as I'm listening to the conversation, I'm also saying to them, this is unrealistic. This makes no sense. If I did, and I did try to do every single thing that we tell managers that they are responsible for doing, and it was hard, especially you think about people who are leading global teams. As I was up in the morning on calls as early as 6 in the morning because I had team members in India and the Philippines. And so I'd be up super early because if anybody that works in a global organization knows that sort of 8, 9, 10 hour is packed with meetings because that's the only time that you can get India, the UK, and the US all in meetings together.
Yep.
And then I try to get my team off if they're in those other locations. I try to get them offline by 11 o'clock because it's super late for them. So I would be up at 6 in the morning on calls. But then we also had people who were like in Australia. So I'd be on calls at 8 o'clock at night and the same days I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so when people say things, and this is a point of contention or for me about the way that managers do things, I think it's about, are you understanding the experience that manager is having? So there might be days when I do cancel your one-on-one because I am so tired because I've been up for 12 hours on these people's network, right? There might be
Mhm.
times when I don't have a budget to do the thing, or I have to be the deliverer of the news that you don't want to hear. And so as I started really working through my career, and continuing to support people leaders and being a people leader, I began to understand that like all we did to support them was just training. And we did not think about the context or the systemic things happening around them that sometimes led to the behavior that we didn't want to see. Working in HR, we talk about even performance management. And I would say we do performance management, we do the cycle, and there's nothing in this performance management cycle that speaks to the quality of someone as a people leader. We compensate them on outcomes. We compensate them on did that widget get built? And we literally have no measure of how they did it. So yes, you have
Mhm.
managers out there doing scorched earth to get those things done. I've had managers say to me, listen, the client comes first. So if I got to like run my team into the ground for the client to be happy, so be it. And that is more cultural than it is an individual manager because we allow it and we create it. So it made me decide to go into sort of this as an entrepreneurial endeavor. One was that I had developed and tested and piloted, because again, I'm a little scientist, an approach to developing people leaders that helped them to improve their personal skills. But I'd also worked in organizations to help them consider how are you creating the environment for what you want your people leaders to be able to do. And so I was like, if I can do it for one company, I can do it for more companies because there are so many companies that really do want to have good performance, high performing managers, but maybe they don't know how. They don't have an IO psychologist on staff. They don't have somebody that maybe has all that sits into three spots of being like, no, I understand HR, I understand development, but I also understand the operational side of the business and I can see how those things come together. So for me, it just was like, I wanted to really help this population of people that sort of make companies run and help them to be better. And so I love working with organizations that are in their startup, scale up, and high growth phases, because I think if you can get it right in the beginning, if you can start off with a culture of excellent people leaders, and as you grow,
Mhm.
you can have the habit and the behavior and the right structures that will help them and your organization be successful over time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the only way to do that is to be able to actually connect with people and be empathetic and be curious about the person who is in front of you and the team that's in front of you to understand that. So, given that we only have a few minutes left, I have to ask you, what's exciting and new that's coming up for the manager to manager community? Can you share that with us?
I can. So what's exciting and new is the manager community. So I started with this
Mhm.
podcast because, as I said, I wanted to have this conversation with managers where they are helping each other. If you listen to almost any people leader, one of the biggest complaints is that they are thrown into a world that is very dynamic, sometimes very difficult without any support. And so I really wanted to make sure that we had this way of helping each other to be successful. And what has always been a part of my strategy, the methodology that I use for helping my people leaders be better, is something that I call perspective, practice, and community. But I wanted to grow it to a place where not only are they just listening to me and somebody else talk, but that they have the opportunity to talk to each other. And so if you're in an organization and you don't have support, you don't have somebody who is helping guide, mentor, who you can ask questions to, you can do that with us. And so the actual manager to manager community is coming soon. I'm working very hard. Just yesterday, I was recording video content for some of the courses that'll be on demand there. But really building out the formal manager community where people leaders will have the opportunity to learn together, to share their best practices, to say, hey, I have a question, to decide what they might want to mentor each other, to come to coaching calls with me and just receive what they may not be receiving in their own organization. So I'm really excited to be able to just continue growing that space for managers to know that they are supported, the work that they do is valuable and appreciated, and that we're just here to help them be successful.
It sounds to me that you're really building this resource and this tool that is a need for managers in the community. And I think that's really fantastic. As we wrap up, I just want to close with thanking you again for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you. I know your listeners, and you have a lot of followers, have listened into this today. But can you just let us all know again how they can reach you and how they can get involved in the manager to manager community?
Yes. Again, you all know you can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably where you found this podcast. So please do connect with me if you're not already connected. And if you look in the show notes for this episode, you will find a link to the waiting list for the manager to manager community. So I'm excited to join you. And I want to thank you for just really being here and being willing to interview me and for giving us your own insight and wisdom from you, how you work with clients. And so if they wanted to reach out to you and learn more about what you do, like how would they do that?
Oh, it's pretty simple. They can either look at the website, which is www.emmedevonish.com. They can find me on LinkedIn at M Devonish or send me an email at info@mdevonish.com.
And just real quick, tell them a little bit more about like the kinds of things they could reach out to you for.
Corporate compliance, especially ADV compliance. It's also HR consulting if you're looking to do talent mapping and hiring people and getting the right people in the right seats, organizational culture workshops, or coaching. So that can be executive and leadership coaching, especially a 360 using emotional intelligence for leaders, or North Star coaching and career coaching. Those are all available, and you can check those out on the website.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again. Obviously, as people leaders, what happens around us is really important. We can't lead well if we're in the middle of chaos and people not doing the things they need to do. So I can imagine that the work that you do makes it better for us to be able to lead in environments that work well and that give us the best fighting chance of leading teams in a healthy space. So thank you for all that you do and just for joining us today. So
Thank you so much.
yeah. So, listeners, thank you again for listening to me today. If there's someone in your community that you think could benefit from this conversation, please do share it with them. And if you find that you are out here playing this full contact sport that we call people leadership by yourself, I encourage you to consider joining the manager to manager community. It's a place where you can connect with other people leaders who are navigating some of the same challenges and willing to just be a peer support system as we all figure it out together. So check the show notes for all of the links. And we will see you again next time here on the Manager to Manager podcast. Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other.